Browns. The Cleveland Browniacs podcast is a part of the Fanatical Elves podcast network, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Elliot Kinnell and Joel Cade.
Okay, well, we know who the hosts are, but who are these moderately intelligent guys that you're talking about?
I don't know. I haven't found them yet.
Well, all right. There's been a lot of news for Browns fans, very important news. Did you hear the news about our former defensive coordinator?
No, Elliot, tell us.
Well, yeah. In fact, I've got a little something that I can show you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Let me just boot this little dude up here just a minute. I'm going to present this in the form of a PowerPoint slide. Yeah, and in fact, I messed it up already. Let me try it again. Share screen and window.
So by former defensive coordinator, you're talking about who?
Well, yeah,
we got to keep the people interested here.
Okay, yeah, okay. And it is, who could it be? Well, it's not Bill Belichick, but Belichick's defensive coordinator. And it's none other than a very famous person, Nick Saban.
That's right, Browns fans. Nick Saban was the Browns defensive coordinator.
And, how come it says give subtitles a try? I don't want that.
Before he left for greener pastures up in Michigan State?
Well, yeah, he was just fired along with Bill. And I got into some big, hairy debate with somebody at Browns backers. Oh, Belichick was not fired. He was merely not rehired because his contract was up, because Art Modell, I guess, was too cheap to fire him early or whatever. I don't know what the point is, but he was not invited to accompany Mr. Modell to Baltimore. Belichick did lead the Browns to the playoffs in 1994. After Modell made the announcement that the team was moving, the team fell apart and went on a losing streak. I don't think that's terribly surprising. It was just total chaos. There was a tremendous, tremendous defense that got them to the playoffs the year before. Nick Saban was the defensive coordinator and just did a tremendous job for us. So Belichick
So what's the news on Nick Saban?
Well, he's retiring. He took an important job or two after he left Cleveland. He became even more famous as the head coach of Michigan State and then Alabama. My dad.
LSU, he won a national championship at LSU.
Oh, yeah, yeah, minor detail. Yeah, LSU.
Coached in Miami, coached the Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins. Well, we'd rather not talk about that. That didn't work out so well. But yeah, Alabama is very well known. My dad graduated from Alabama about, 1947 or something like that. And he's 98 years old. And he makes me watch Alabama every Saturday, whether I want to or not, because I'm an Ohio State graduate and I like Ohio State. But I have to watch Alabama football. I guess it's okay. But yeah, Nick Saban is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant coach. And he got fired by Art Modell, the trifecta, three of the greatest coaches in history.
Oh, yeah.
I think Saban is probably the greatest college coach in history. Bill Belichick, if he's not the greatest professional coach in history, it's probably Paul Brown, who's also the Cleveland Browns founder and head coach for many, many years throughout their history. Art Modell fired all three. Also rubbing it in, people forget that he ran Jim Brown out of town. Jim Brown did not just spontaneously decide to retire, but instead Art Modell gave him an ultimatum because his movie, The Dirty Dozen, ran overtime in production in France, and Art Modell would not tolerate it. And Jim Brown had to retire, or else, make a terrible, violate his contract with the Hollywood people, the movie makers, and he couldn't do that. That was just out of the question. Art Modell made life impossible for Jim Brown, and he had to retire. And anyway, he made more money with the movies in his film career than he did with the Cleveland Browns anyway. It was a ridiculous, totally stupid decision by Mr. Modell. And he also, by the way, traded away Hall of Famer Paul Warfield, the brilliant wide receiver, was traded for Mike Phipps, who never really had much of a career. But he was quarterback, and we know we have to have a franchise quarterback in order to have a winning football team. Isn't that right, Joel?
Yes.
Isn't that right? Yes. Gotta have that franchise quarterback. It's worth it to trade Hall of Famer Paul Warfield. We also traded another Pro Bowl wide receiver in Clifton McNeil the year before, just to show that we can do without Pro Bowl we need those guys. We just don't need them. Trade them for quarterbacks. That's how we got Bill Nelson. I guess that was probably a fair deal because Bill Nelson was a pretty good quarterback. But we traded twice in a row for all-pro wide receivers for quarterbacks. Ugh. But, yeah, many people still want Art Modell to go to the Hall of Fame. Now, let's give him some credit. He did start Monday Night Football. He was one of the major instigators for football on Monday nights and made a lot of money for the NFL, and they're very grateful to him for that, rightly so. But he was the worst owner/general managers in NFL history, and you can't look at his record without realizing that. And then to top it off, he's the guy that removed the Cleveland Browns from Cleveland and moved them to Baltimore. That's really just unforgivable. So I'm still mad about that. I
think everyone who remembers that is still mad about that.
Yeah, well, I remember, firing Paul Brown in 1963, and I never forgave him for that. He also fired Marty Schottenheimer because he couldn't win the playoffs with his fourth-string quarterback. In fact, we didn't talk about that. I should have brought that up the other day. We were talking about winning with four quarterbacks. This has happened before where we had a fourth-string quarterback in the playoffs, and the fourth-string quarterback did win the week before with 1 week's worth of familiarity with the playbook. That was Don Strock, and that could not be forgiven by Mr. Modell. That's another dumbass move. Pardon my French. But there is a precedent for that. I forgot to mention that. I did a little bit of retrospective on quarterbacks that, or Browns teams that had multiple quarterbacks, but I forgot about that. That was the year that Bernie Kosar went down, Mike Pagel went down, Gary Danielson went down, and they hired Don Strock off the street. He was a Miami Dolphins backup for many years, and he came in with 1 week of familiarity with the playbook, learned 10 plays, went up against the Houston Oilers and beat them, and then they faced the Oilers the next week in the playoffs, and the Oilers they were able to figure out which 10 plays he knew, and they were able to prepare much better, and so that was that.
Yeah.
So, okay, what else you got about defensive coordinator Saban?
I think Nick Saban, it doesn't surprise me he's retiring when he's 72. His style is not really conducive to the college game as it's become with the NILs. I mean, Nick Saban's always been a coach, kind of like in the Urban Meyer mold, where Urban Meyer's probably more in the Nick Saban mold, where like rule with an iron fist and everything's going to be done my way. And if it doesn't done my way, then you can just go somewhere else. Well, now college players have a chance to go somewhere else. And I'm not sure the kind of iron fisted program that he runs at Alabama is going to work now, that as soon as somebody doesn't get to start their first year, or you ask them to work hard, or you ask them to pay their dues, and they're like, why should I pay my dues when I can go to another program and get paid $2 million?
Yeah, he may just not want to adapt to this new style of game.
I mean, he's 72. Why should he? He's richer than rich. And,
yeah.
Well, he has nothing left to prove.
He can make $10 million a year as a commentator, certainly.
Of those Aflac commercials, man.
There you go. Those are wonderful commercials, by the way. I really like those.
Get on those Aflac commercials.
Just as an artistic point of view, those are really well done commercials.
They're kind of transitioned to Dion in those commercials. It's like he's kind of hanging that up, and Dion's going to start taking over.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a very well done thing, and it was particularly timely because some of the how shall I say, some of the harsher sports writers were giving Deion Sanders a hard time, and it was a good opportunity for Aflac and for Coach Saban to show the proper way to interact with, between a Southern white coach and an African American coach, and they were able to address each other politely. And I think it worked out very well. It was a very, very well done, socially responsible. That's the word I was looking for, the operative phrase I was looking for. It was well done. Liked it.
All right, Elliot, we're coming up on the break here.
Okay, let's do a break.
And then I'll come off and we'll go on the break and we will chat about something else on the other side.
Yeah, about a new quarterback, promotion in the Cleveland Browns hierarchy.
All right. We'll catch that on the other side. All right, hang on. All right, we're back. Elliot, I think you were alluding to the idea that the Cleveland Browns have decided. Now, so yeah, I've been under the weather today, so that's why I'm not talking much today. But from what I can see on the X, on the Twitter, the Browns have decided to promote Jeff Driscoll over PJ Walker as the number 2 quarterback.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true. Let's acknowledge
God help us all.
Yeah, let's acknowledge the Dogs, the Cleveland Browns podcast, for posting this on X. And by the way, I forgot to acknowledge the previous tweet from at Coach J Evans 12 about Coach Belichick and Coach Nick Saban. But anyway, yeah, we always important to acknowledge our sources. But this decision seems very strange. My gosh, because the Browns really played terrible with, they didn't have their starting backups against Cincinnati. They played their backups, and they really got kind of killed. They lost, I think it was 31-14, wasn't it? And they had Jeff Driscoll as the starting backup quarterback, or was it the backup starting quarterback? But anyway, he played instead of PJ Walker, and a lot of fans were upset about that because we really liked PJ Walker. He came in against Indianapolis, did a pretty good job, and he also started the game against San Francisco. Everybody thought that San Francisco was a really top-notch team. Many people believed then and continue to believe that they were the number 1 team in the NFL. And who won that game? Well, it was the Cleveland Browns. And you could say, we were kind of lucky to beat them, and that may be true. Nevertheless, it was very important to hang on to the football and put ourselves in the position where we were competing at the end so that we could win that game. So PJ Walker deserves a great deal of credit for holding the team together and allowing the team to win that game. We talk about complementary football all the time. The defense played outstanding, and the Browns were able to come up with a win against that. Now, I've been boosting Jeff Driscoll since October, and I've been complaining all along that they should have been training somebody at least on the practice squad in order to get them familiar with the playbook. Jeff Driscoll knows the Browns playbook to some extent because of, as the Dogs point out at the Dogs podcast, that Driscoll has experience with Drew. Let's see, that's not right. It's Petzing, right? Not Petzing.
Petzing.
Yeah. So anyway, he was the Cleveland Browns quarterback coach under. Let's see, who was he with? Was that under? Oh man, I forget which Browns coach, but he was with the Cleveland Browns for a while, and then he was with the Minnesota Vikings when Stefanski was there, and he was the offensive coordinator. So they know each other very well. They shared common concepts, and they use basically the same playbook in Minnesota. Many of the same plays are run in Cleveland as in Minnesota.
Hey, I want to interject one thing.
Hmm.
I'm here looking at X, right? And McNeil has this tweet out, and it shows Bill Belichick and Nick Saban together in these orange sweatshirts with Browns like in cursive with the line underneath it that says football. I want one of these. I'm going to try to hunt one of these down on the internet. The orange sweatshirt with Browns written on it. I'm going to try to find one of these and buy it.
Okay.
These look sharp. These are sharp, man.
I'd like to see you in it, man. Yeah, model it for us, and maybe
I'll buy it and try to model it.
Yeah, maybe we can have a giveaway or something. Better yet, sell them. We need the money for sure. But yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out, although PJ Walker has done a really good job for the Cleveland Browns, trivia question number 1: who has more TD passes for the Cleveland Browns this season? Is it Driscoll or is it PJ? Can you answer that question for us, Joel?
Driscoll's got 2, so I'm thinking with PJ, the Browns ran the ball a lot. I don't know. That's going to be a toss-up.
Well, it's Driscoll. He threw 2 in the second half. His first half was pretty bad against Cincinnati, but he started to find a range a little bit, threw 2 touchdown passes. PJ only has 1 for the entire season, and he has 5 interceptions.
Yeah, he's not played well.
That's not good. So even though we like PJ, we think that he's a good leader, and we think that he can run the offense and function when the running game is working well. We're not sure that the running game is going to work well, just because remember that on the offensive line, we're playing like 3rd and 4th string at the offensive tackle positions. And we remind ourselves that those positions are very critical to having a good running game. It's not just a matter of having good running backs. You need to have the meat and potatoes on that offensive line. We still, we also had problems with injuries at that crucial left guard position. You know something about playing left guard, don't you?
Yes, and in an outside zone offense like the Browns run, they need excellent guards to make that work. And the Browns have excellent guards that can make that offense work, because you have to block the 3 technique. It's usually lined up on the outside of the guard where the 3 technique is. You have to have a guard that can reach out and block that person. And Bitonio and Teller can do it. So if you don't have those guys in the game, the Browns' run game becomes pedestrian at best.
Well, Teller is, as far as we know, pretty healthy. He's been able to stay intact. But Bitonio has struggled to maintain his normal Pro Bowl form late in the season. In fact, I was hoping that he would not play this last game against Cincinnati, but he did play. And I'm not sure if he's really his normal self at this point. What do you think? Did you have a chance to really zoom in on how well he is doing? Is he the same Joel Bitonio that we're used to seeing?
Did he end up playing Sunday?
Yes, he did. He did play.
I kind of half zoned that game out, to be honest with you. What happened that he came in? I thought he was inactive.
No, unless I'm hallucinating. Let me go back to NFL.com and verify how many snaps he played. But I believe that the entire starting offensive line was represented, and that only the big boys, quarterback and Myles Garrett, were the only ones that really sat out. Oh, and then Amari.
No, you're
Cooper.
right. He was not inactive. Greg Newsome, Thornhill, Cooper, Goodwin, Hopkins, Ford Jr.
Yeah, guys who were really
Garrett
actually
were
injured.
inactive. Yeah. Huh.
But
well, I didn't notice he played at all, man. I was just kind of
I don't believe he
zoned
played
out on that, man. I was just watching Driscoll just throw the ball all over the place and oh my God, this is like a preseason game. Like, this is terrible.
Well, yeah, I continue to believe that Driscoll is a talent. He's a guy that...
Well, he just hasn't had a chance to play in the offense, right? He hasn't had a chance to really play with anybody. And plus, he's playing with a lot of backups, so he's being pressured a lot. And, the receivers out there aren't doing, they're not the top end receivers. I want to switch gears for a second because I want to call out the stupidity of the week. And I'm going to stop talking here. My throat's starting to feel it. But I want to call out the stupidity of the week. The Detroit Lions go out there with nothing to gain, as far as I can tell, and start all their starters. And then their tight end Laporta hurts his knee. And I don't even think he's available for this week. I think Matt Laporta is hurt, and you went out there and hurt your star tight end. I know this isn't a Lions show, but I mean, come on. You can't sit there. Is it Matt Laporta? No, Matt Laporta was the baseball player. Man, what was the guy's name from Detroit?
Yeah, I don't really follow Detroit well enough. I can't help you.
I just thought it was the dumbest thing I've seen. Is you go out there and start all your starters and try to go out there and aggressively win a game that has no meaningful impact on your season. And you go out there, Sam Laporta, and you go out there and get your tight end hurt. He didn't practice. He has an outside shot to play in the playoff game. He got hurt in a meaningless game. That is why you sit your starters. That's why I was saying all last week that the offense's number one job this week, all those backups playing, their number one job was to not get hurt. That was their job.
Yeah.
Don't get hurt, because then you got to put in your starters. Then they could get hurt. Like Cedric Tillman now is in concussion protocol. We're probably not going to have him for the week.
Well, yeah, I guess they felt like they couldn't sit down everybody, or that there would be too much chaos, and that they just didn't have enough people on the roster to set down the first string.
Yeah, the talking about the Browns on Sunday.
Yeah,
you can't make everyone inactive, and you got to have people available in case somebody gets hurt or whatever. I just didn't know of anybody getting hurt or any reason why they would put the number ones in. Maybe just to, like I mentioned, just to keep them fresh, keep them playing. I don't understand why any of them would play.
Well, yeah, I guess part of it's the integrity of the game. Part of it is that they needed to mollify the gambling community, maintain a credible point spread. I don't know. The
gambling community should have been smart enough to know that the Bengals were going to win that game. That's all I'm saying.
But yeah, no, I think I questioned the point spread based on the quarterback not playing and Myles Garrett not playing. In fact, I was going to talk about Myles Garrett on this show.
Well, let's do that now. Let's switch over to Myles Garrett.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to talk about Myles Garrett. I went through and looked at every game that Myles Garrett played and didn't play to understand what the point spread was or was not.
And why is that important? What's that? What are we comparing this
to? Because, there's an ongoing debate in the handicapping community about how valuable a defensive end is. And there was a blurb that passed around the Twitter community this past week. And in fact, it's been out for quite some time in various forms about how valuable TJ Watt is. And I don't want to get into a debate about who's better, Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. But the point is that when TJ Watt is not playing, the Steelers defense doesn't play for what. And that the point spread difference is something on the order of 5.5 points per game. So it's not a trivial thing. But, the conventional wisdom is that defensive players don't actually contribute that much to the point spread. So if you have a star defensive player that is maybe worth 1.2 points or maybe 3 points on the outside. But my belief is that these players actually do make a big difference, and that if you have a star that's out, that it could be, something in the order of a quarterback. Like a quarterback typically is like 4 points when you go to a decent backup, and maybe the largest point spread difference was one year when Peyton Manning went out and Curtis Painter went in his place. They thought that was about a 9-point differential between those two individuals. So it depends on how good your guy is and how good your backup is. And the largest ever was, the number one quarterback and then a backup that maybe they thought was not so super effective. But, maybe in today's top echelon of quarterbacks, the thought is that the very star quarterbacks are maybe worth about 6 points if they get injured, something like that. And then defensive players are, maybe worth 3. And I think they're probably worth 5 or 6. And so I think that the number for TJ Watt of 5.5 is relatively believable. I don't think it's, like a happy coincidence. You know how people like to find, clever statistics and pretend that they're important and they really aren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they twist statistics in order to make a point. I think that's kind of real. I think that the Steelers really are about 5.5 points worse if they don't have TJ Watt in the lineup.
All right, so tell us about Myles Garrett. What's going on with Myles Garrett?
Okay, so let's talk about Myles Garrett. I did the same thing for Myles Garrett that all these Steeler fans did. For TJ, I looked up all of his games, Myles Garrett's games, or seasons, I should say, and when he didn't play, what did the Browns do? And when he did play, what did he do? And I also, by the way, I looked up the Browns' complementary points, what happened on offense as well. Because I do believe in complementary footballs. When you generate a strip sack, for example, you're not just taking away points from the opposing offense, you're also giving your own team a better chance to score. Doesn't that seem believable?
Yes.
So Myles Garrett is contributing to the Browns' offense by giving them the ball. And so what I found was that it is still, though, a small data sample. You don't have like hundreds of games in order to take data. And so there are uncertainties in this kind of analysis. But what I found was that in the games where Myles Garrett was absent, notably when he was suspended, and there was one year when he was injured. There was also a year when he had COVID. He missed 2 games. But also I feel like he was subpar.
Yeah, he was never right that year.
He was not right that year, and I think he accumulated the team accumulated some bad statistics when he came back, and I think that kind of threw things off a little bit. But anyway, he's worth about 2.7 to 3 points to the defense, but the offense also scored 1.4 points more when Myles Garrett started and played the game. And so all in all, his point spread impact is 4.1 throughout his career. And I think he's probably worth more now than he was when he was a rookie. I think he plays at a much higher level now than he did when he was a kid.
Right.
So, so I think 5 or 6 points is not out of the question for a player like Myles Garrett, like TJ Watt. I think those players probably very similar to quarterbacks, and they're probably underappreciated. And I also think that when you put in I'm not talking about the defensive end position necessarily, but when you are forced to use backups, I think that pumps up the score a little bit. What I'm getting at, though, for the playoff game against Buffalo, First of all, I think that the large point spread for Buffalo is probably justified. But what I'm looking at is the over-under is 36 points. That's a very low total. I don't understand why you would believe that the Pittsburgh defense is going to play like gangbusters without TJ Watt. Are they expecting to have like 6 feet of snow or something like that in Buffalo? Is that why
there's supposed to be snow in Buffalo?
Like how much?
I don't know how much, but I know Buffalo is.
I know it snows in Buffalo. Is this going to be like a 36 points seems like a ridiculous. In fact, let me look that up. But on the face of it, that seems like a pathetically.
What day are they playing?
Are
they Sunday?
Let me look that up.
I mean, Saturday's got a 44% chance of snow, and Sunday's got a 58% chance of snow.
Well, okay, here's one of the TV stations. And, okay, it's Sunday, and they're looking for high winds. Oh, okay, high winds, frigid wind chills look likely, and snow is possible. Okay, gusts could reach as high as 40 miles per hour. And so, okay, lake effect. Well, maybe that's going to knock it down a little bit. But even so, Josh Allen can still run the ball. So maybe that's what they're thinking, is that the bad weather is going to hold the score. I'm going to have to think about that. But I don't anticipate the Steelers having the normal Steelers defense without TJ Watt. I don't know that I care what the situation.
They're not going to get the same pressure on the quarterback. All they can do in Buffalo, all they can do in Pittsburgh is move Highsmith into the garbage role and then bring in another outside linebacker to play Highsmith's role, which is basically to put enough pressure on the quarterback to flush the quarterback out to the garbage collector. So I don't know if that's going to be as effective. It all comes down to how much can Highsmith's backup play up to Highsmith's level. If Highsmith's backup can play up to his level, then Highsmith's going to look just as good as TJ Watt, if not better. So at that point, it really just comes down to how good are their backups. And apparently they're not that good because they lose 5 points a game when TJ Watt's not around. So,
well, that's what I'm saying. Is I think the points, that's the defense, and we also talked about the complementary effect, which the Steelers fans haven't bothered to add up. Maybe later in the week I'll try to calculate what that is. But TJ could very well have an effect on the offense also. But also, I have some confidence in Mason Rudolph. I think he's a pretty good quarterback. When he's not fighting with defensive ends, he can throw the ball. I've always thought that he was a guy.
Well, as long as you run the ball and establish a run game, he can throw play action passes. This is always the thing about Baker Mayfield, right? Oh, he's a play action pass quarterback. Well, that is the epitome of who Mason Rudolph is. He is not going to stand back, drop back 40 times, and win you a football game. Now, if you run the ball 25 times, have him play action maybe 15, you're going to have a pretty good offense, which is all they've done. They've scaled that offense back so much that a good defense should be able to hone in and exploit it. So I really think Buffalo is going to take this game. Elliot, we're coming up on a time, so I want to make my last statement, then I'm going to give you a chance to make your last statement, okay? So I've read a lot of this stuff on X, and I hear a lot of people talking about where's next week's game going to be. I want to point out that Houston is a very, very good football team. You cannot look past Houston. You cannot sit there and think that this game is going to be a walk or a piece of cake, walk in the park kind of situation with the game. I mean, the Browns, if I have not heard anything in press conferences to make me think the Browns are taking this approach, but fans are taking this approach. This is going to be a hard-fought game. This is not going to be we're going to beat them 36-0 football game. They are a different team than the team we played last time. So buckle up for a ball game this week. And if you think, let's talk about what the scenarios are for next week's game, you are way ahead of yourself. And let's hope the Browns as an organization are not that ahead of themselves. I'm confident they're not, but you cannot do that and be successful. You have to beat the opponent you're playing this week. All right, Elliot, I'm going to give you a last dibs here. What you got?
Yeah, let me say this. I totally agree with you, first of all, and I'll also say this, which will generate some hate mail for me, I'm sure, but C.J. Stroud is the best quarterback on the field, or will be the best quarterback on the field on Sunday. We are playing on Sunday, aren't we?
Playing Saturday at 4:30.
Saturday. Sorry about that. But
Yep.
Yeah, he is really a tremendous quarterback. Those Ohio State quarterbacks, man. And he's a tremendous talent. Now, I think the Browns do have an advantage because they have more playoff experience, and that sort of thing does matter. But the Browns are the most injured team in the NFL. The Browns do have an advantage because they're built to win playoff football in cold weather, but that's not what we're playing. We're playing a Southern team on their field. So I think there's a lot of factors that actually favor Houston. The experience factor is the one thing that the Browns have in their favor. And I think that, if it comes down to the fourth quarter in the, last 2 minutes, which it probably will, the Browns will have an advantage and be able to, hopefully put the pigskin in the end zone when they need to. But I think Houston is going to have a shot at this, and will probably,
it's going to be a ball game. You can't walk in there thinking this is a done deal. It's going to be a ball game. All right, buddy. We're out. Guys, follow us on Twitter, on X, on the X, whatever the heck they call this thing. And, follow us and tag along. Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Browniacs. Please like and follow us on Spotify and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Go Browns!